My mother-in-law always wanted to humiliate me. On my wedding day, I called her Mom. She immediately yelled, "You're calling too soon. I'm not your mother." Relatives burst into laughter, and my father-in-law gave me a knowing look. I remained calm, chuckled twice, and replied, "You're right, I did call too soon." Mississippi. From that moment on, after the wedding, she made it her mission to embarrass me in public. Whenever I couldn't bear it anymore and stood up for myself, she would cover her mouth, sneering, "Oh my, why are you acting so bitter? I'm just joking with you, dear." With just those words, I became the tragic heroine of a never-ending play. After giving birth, she deliberately invited relatives over, just to watch me breastfeed, humiliating me beyond words. With the whole family working against me, I sank into postpartum depression. In the end, I took my own life, but when I opened my eyes, I found myself back at my wedding with my fiancé, and right by my ear, I heard that same voice again. "You're calling too soon. I'm not your mother." That was when it all came rushing back. At my wedding, I had called her Mom, and in front of everyone, she had rejected me. Back then, I swallowed my pride, thinking I had to endure it since we would be living together. But after the wedding, she never stopped humiliating me. On the very first day of my marriage, she made me shoulder all the household chores. She said it outright, "My son married you to be a princess? Housework is a woman's duty. If you're part of this family, you take care of this family." I used work as an excuse, saying I was too busy to cook, but from then on, whenever others were around, she would mock her own son. "Oh, he's perfect, except he married a useless wife. She can't do anything right." Hearing this over and over, I finally snapped. But when I spoke up, she sneered, covering her mouth. "Oh my, why are you so bitter? I was just joking, dear." That sentence, like oil on fire, only fueled my anger. After I gave birth, she became even worse. She called all the relatives over just to watch me breastfeed. She stared at me and muttered, "Why is the baby crying so much? Are you not producing enough milk? If you don't have enough, how will he ever be full?" Then, without hesitation, she pulled the baby away and grabbed my chest with her own hands. Squeezing, she smirked, "See? Barely anything. Big breasts, but no milk. What a waste. A woman's body is made for feeding. If you can't feed your child, what's the point?" She even dragged me over, so the relatives could see, announcing, "My daughter-in-law has no milk. My poor grandson, how pitiful." Rumors spread, crushing me with shame. I sank into postpartum depression and, in the end, I took my own life. But this time, I have returned. Recalling my past life, I just wanted to scream, "Hypocrites." I turned and slapped my father-in-law, hard. "Bringing your mistress here on such an important day?" Then I swung around and slapped my mother-in-law. A red handprint bloomed on her cheek. "On a day like this, do you think you deserve to be here?" The sharp crack of the slap echoed through the wedding hall. My mother-in-law and father-in-law clutched their faces, stunned. The guests stood frozen in disbelief. All eyes locked onto me. "Myo Myo, what are you doing?" Shenyan shouted in shock. I scoffed at the memory of my past life. Every time his mother humiliated me, he acted deaf and blind. Only when I fought back did he step in, saying, "You should be kind to my mother. She only wants what's best for you." Is she my mother? The thought made my fury surge. I swung my hand again. A slap landed across Shenyan's face. Before he could react, I struck again. And again. "On your big day, you didn't even bring your real mother, so I'll discipline you instead. Unfilial bastard." "Wait." Myo Myo, slap. The sound of my hand meeting his skin rang out again and again. The guests rushed forward, grabbing my arms, shouting, "The bride is attacking people. Myo Myo, you've got it all wrong." Anyone who tried to grab me got slapped in return. The sharp cracks echoed through the wedding hall. Only when my hand burned with pain did I finally stop. Glaring at them, I shouted, "Why are you stopping me? I won't allow anyone to insult my mother-in-law." "Myo Myo, you've misunderstood." Shenyan's aunt wiped her face and pointed at my mother-in-law. "She is your mother-in-law." I froze, staring at the woman. Her face turned pale, then red. She stammered, unable to speak. Her gaze darted around nervously. Her eyes flickered in panic before she forced a weak smile. "Aha. I was just joking." "Haha, I didn't think you'd take it seriously." I scoffed, "Something like this? How could you joke about it so casually? You almost gave me a heart attack." I pouted, reaching out my hand. "Look, Mom, my hand is all swollen from slapping." A fake smile. "Mom, look. My hand is all swollen from slapping." The fake smile on my mother-in-law's face almost cracked. My aunt praised me. "Haha, what a filial daughter-in-law." The relatives quickly chimed in. "That's right. With such a daughter-in-law, you'll live a life of comfort. A devoted daughter-in-law like this. You must have accumulated great virtue in your past life." My mother-in-law finally calmed down, smiling warmly as she held my hand. "Myo Myo, from now on, I'll treat you like my own daughter. I'll love you with all my heart." Hearing her words, I pretended to be shy, gently holding her hand in return. "I'll be filial to you too, Mom. Don't worry, all the virtue you accumulated in your past life, I'll repay it all in this life. Now, let's continue the wedding." My father-in-law stood up, glancing at Shenyan with his swollen face. his eyes full of anger. In my past life, Shenyan and I got along well. We were both indifferent, never competing. We quickly registered our marriage. But I never realized he was only indifferent toward me and eased the burden of house and car loans. I encouraged him to work hard, but he only responded coldly, "Why have you become so materialistic?" To strive for a promotion. Every day, I have to stay up late and get up early, working hard to support the family. When I suffered from postpartum depression and asked for help, he responded indifferently, "Can you stop overreacting? Having a baby and suffering from depression? Your mom worked in the fields the day after giving birth. She didn't complain." Every time I resisted his mother, he'd get angry, stand up to defend her like a dutiful son, acting like it was all my fault. It was my fault for resisting her. It was my fault for having depression. In this life, if Shenyan and I swapped places, I'd love to see if he could still be such a good son for his mother. The very first day after the wedding, before the sun was even up, my mother-in-law called me. She acted annoyed. "What time is it and you're still not awake? If you don't get up and make breakfast, what will Shenyan eat? You've married into this family, so the housework is your responsibility. If you want to be a good wife, you have to take care of your husband. Take good care of Shenyan and you'll have peaceful days." I couldn't help but laugh. I do freelance work online. While my income may not be impressive, it's stable. Shenyan's salary doesn't even compare to mine, and yet he's the one considered the breadwinner. Turns out, people were right. When my father-in-law does housework, my mother-in-law gets upset. When my mother-in-law does housework, my father-in-law is unhappy. When my husband does housework, both my in-laws are displeased. But when the daughter-in-law does housework, everyone is happy. "Why are you laughing?" My mother-in-law frowned. Her eyes flashed with anger. In my previous life, I used work as an excuse to refuse her. As a result, she went around saying I was lazy and selfish. But this time, I'll still refuse the housework. Whoever likes doing it, do it. I'm not doing it. She angrily stepped forward and squeezed my arm tightly. Her eyes filled with disbelief. "What did you just say?" My arm hurt sharply. "You're such a fake, damn it. Waking me up early already has me pissed off." I jerked my arm away and grabbed her collar, saying in a low voice, "Are you deaf?" I said I'm not doing it. She held my arm tightly, struggling, her face full of anger. "I knew it. I knew you were faking it at the wedding. You purposely slapped me, didn't you?" I sneered inwardly, still keeping my innocent expression. "Faking what? I didn't intentionally say anything rude." "Mom, don't be mad. I just get uncomfortable when I'm woken up. Since I was little, anyone who woke me up while I was sleeping." I purposely stopped, raised my hand as if about to slap her. My mother-in-law saw my action and took a step back, instinctively covering her face. I laughed lightly and turned to go back to my room. My mother-in-law left, embarrassed. I went back to my room and continued to sleep in a daze. I thought my mother-in-law definitely wouldn't let this go. She would find a chance to teach me a lesson. Sure enough, by noon, when I woke up, I saw the living room full of relatives. Everyone was chatting excitedly. "This daughter-in-law of this family hasn't gotten up yet, it's noon already. Never seen anyone this lazy. She seemed fine at the wedding yesterday. But who knew she'd come home and turn into a dog's den like this? Looks good on the outside, though." A relative spoke up. "Other people's daughters-in-law do all the work. The mother-in-law doesn't have to lift a finger. But this daughter-in-law isn't right. She doesn't seem to see anything that needs to be done. Don't you teach her?" After they finished talking, my mother-in-law slowly spoke up. "Oh, you all misunderstood. My Myo isn't like that at all. This morning, she woke up early and cleaned the house. She's very diligent. In my previous life, I accumulated good karma, so in this life, I have such a good daughter-in-law." I was stunned for a moment. Clearly, I hadn't done anything. How could she flip like this? Since when did my mother-in-law start speaking well of me? You should know, every time she gets together with relatives, she never fails to criticize or mock me, always using those words. To prove that she could easily control me. Now, she's acting like she's defending me. She must be plotting something. The instinct of a media person made me come up with an idea. I secretly took the live streaming equipment and placed it somewhere no one could see. I changed the account name to Life of a Countryside Daughter-in-Law. What is she doing with her mother-in-law at home? Then I started the live stream. At the moment, there were very few viewers. My mother-in-law took a stack of cups from the cupboard. She placed them in front of the relatives. "Here, you see this? This is the cup Myo washed this morning. It's very clean." The relatives immediately changed their expressions. "Wow, this daughter-in-law is so talented and capable." "That's right. Your family is truly blessed. Myo is not only kind but also so skilled. She's the perfect daughter-in-law and wife." My mother-in-law laughed loudly, clearly enjoying the praise. Yes, Myo is a wonderful wife and daughter-in-law. Let me pour everyone a drink." After saying that, she poured water into each cup and handed it to the relatives. Little did we know, as soon as they took a sip, they immediately spat it out. Who would have thought that as soon as they took a sip, they immediately spat it out. The sound of cups crashing to the floor, water splashing everywhere. The others set their cups down, their faces full of complicated expressions. Why does this water smell so strange? A middle-aged woman frowned and spoke up. I think it's coming from the cups. The person next to her said, this smell, why does it seem like? The two of them looked at each other, their faces filled with horror. A weak voice broke the silence in the room. It smells like sanitary pads. Everyone turned to look at each other. Their faces showed an indescribable disgust. At that moment, my mother-in-law relaxed her brows and smiled in satisfaction, but she still pretended to defend me. Mio isn't just diligent, she's also very frugal. The water you all just drank. She wiped the cups with a sanitary pad. What? An ant shot up from her seat, screaming in horror. A sanitary pad? How could she use that to clean things? My mother-in-law also stood up, gently patting the ant's arm to calm her. Don't worry, ladies. Mio only used a clean sanitary pad. She just used the last one before her cycle ended. She washed it thoroughly. It would be such a waste to throw it away. That statement was like a bomb, detonating the entire living room. People screamed in rage, and some even gagged uncontrollably. A red-faced uncle muttered under his breath. She looks so pretty, how could she do something like this? The women erupted in furious scolding. Oh my god, this daughter-in-law is disgusting. Sis, I'm not trying to be mean, but how can you tolerate a daughter-in-law like this? What kind of upbringing did her family give her? Goodness, a person like Mio only knows how to ruin things. My mother-in-law stood beside them, listening to the insults. I saw her smirk, unable to hide her satisfaction. This was her favorite pastime, whether I was there or not. She always found ways to humiliate me. As the scolding reached its peak, I stepped out. My mother-in-law immediately switched to her kind mother-in-law act. She rushed over. Mio, you're up? I was just praising you in front of everyone. Praising me? I brushed her hand away, my voice hoarse. For being so frugal that I use sanitary pads to clean cups. My eyes turned red. I've always treated you like my real mother. Why do you treat me like this? That sanitary pad wasn't even mine. It wasn't mine. My mother-in-law froze. How could that be? There are only 2 women in this house. If it wasn't yours, then, was it mine? She quickly tried to cover up. We're all family here. What's there to be embarrassed about? My chest burned with rage. I wanted to slap her. In my past life, I always tried my best to fulfill my duties as a daughter-in-law. I never did anything to offend her. Yet she kept fabricating lies to humiliate me. Suppressing my emotions, I lowered my head, feigning grievance, then looked up at her. Mother, it's fine if others misunderstand me, but I don't want you to misunderstand me. I'll prove that the sanitary pad wasn't mine. As I spoke, I reached into my pants. I pulled out a blood-soaked sanitary pad. My mother-in-law, as if sensing what was coming, took a step back. But I was faster, like lightning. I smacked the pad straight into her face. At that moment, Tam Neum came home from work. Seeing his mother's face dripping wet, he rushed over in panic. Mom, what happened to you? Then he turned to me, his face full of stern accusation. Mio, what is this? Is this how you take care of my mother? Without asking for an explanation, Tam Neum scolded me immediately. His usual composed demeanor vanished. In my past life, I saw his bias as merely an act of filial piety, so I endured it without resistance. But now, I just wanted to curse my past weak self to death. I calmly recounted the entire incident. The moment I mentioned sanitary pad, Tam Neum seemed to realize something. His face showed embarrassment. Mom, you were wrong this time. Mio was sleeping all morning. When would she have had time to wash the cup? My mother-in-law froze, her face full of confusion. She looked at her son with a pained expression, unable to understand why he wasn't taking her side. But after thinking it over, she assumed his words must make sense. Right, I was the one who washed the cup. However, she still refused to let me off the hook. But that sanitary pad must be hers. If it's not hers, then whose is it? The more she spoke, the more agitated she became. Completely ignoring Tam Neum's increasingly uncomfortable expression, he tried to interrupt. Mom, stop talking. Let's leave Mio some dignity. This matter ends here. Hearing that, I pretended to have a realization. Oh. Now I remember, the sanitary pad belongs to Tam Neum. All eyes in the room turned to me. Mom, did you forget? He has hemorrhoids, and they flared up last night. I thought using a sanitary pad as a temporary cushion would help. As soon as I finished speaking, silence filled the room. A few seconds later, the sound of retching echoed. My mother-in-law was too flustered to say anything. Tam Neum was so mortified he wished he could disappear. Doesn't our family have toilet paper? Using toilet paper to wipe the cup is fine, but why do something this disgusting? Especially when she was trying to frame me. Tam Neum had always remained indifferent, pretending it had nothing to do with him. But when his own reputation was at stake, he finally tore off the mask of a dutiful son to rebuke his mother. For the first time, he spoke harshly to her. My mother-in-law wiped her tears, looking aggrieved. I only did this for your sake. If it wasn't for wanting you to have a better life. She stopped mid-sentence and turned to me, her eyes full of hatred. She pointed her finger straight at me. If it weren't for this wretched woman, I wouldn't have had to suffer like this. Enough, Mom. Tam Neum shouted. Didn't you bring this upon yourself? From now on, stop making things difficult for Mio Mio. My mother-in-law fell silent, but her eyes still burned with hatred toward me. Meanwhile, the view count on my live stream surged. I skimmed through the comments. Most were calling my mother-in-law disgusting. A few even called Tam Neum useless. Why would a mother-in-law do something so vile? Just to frame her daughter-in-law? Does she see her as an enemy? Haha, my mother-in-law is just like her. All because she thinks daughters-in-law are easy to bully. Haha, my mother-in-law is just like her. She thinks daughters-in-law are easy to bully. Who would have thought? The streamer would slap her mother-in-law with a sanitary pad? So satisfying. Why does the streamer even need this man? Is there no one else but him? Reading this, I silently answered in my heart. Because he's big. After that incident, relatives visited my house much less. One day, while taking a walk, I overheard whispers. The wife from the Tam family, she's a walking disaster. Did you hear about it? The other person leaned in closer. I heard she used her daughter-in-law's sanitary pad to wipe cups before serving drinks to guests. That's disgusting. Who would do such a thing? Who knows? Maybe she has some weird fetish. I also heard she and her son both have hemorrhoids, and their faces are covered in blood from it. Better stay away from their house, or you might catch something. My mother-in-law and Tam Neum's reputation was completely ruined, but for me, it still wasn't enough. In my past life, I died because of them. In this life, I will make them pay even more. A few days later, my mother-in-law sought me out again. This time, she didn't try to frame me, she targeted something else. I heard you and Tam Neum have been married for so long, yet you still have no children. Her eyes darted around before she lowered her voice. I have a secret family remedy. It guarantees you'll give birth to a strong, fair-skinned boy. The second uncle's daughter-in-law used this remedy, and gave birth to a chubby baby boy. I stared at her, my heart filled with fury. In my past life, because of her remedy, I vomited for days. She claimed it was just morning sickness. She insisted that it was working and even increased my dosage. In the end, the child I fought so hard to conceive was born frail and weak. It devastated me, both physically and mentally, leading to postpartum depression. Later, I found out her remedy was actually soup made from dead rats. I clenched my teeth, suppressing my rage, and faked excitement. Really, mother? It can truly help me have a healthy baby boy. You wouldn't believe it. Tam Neum and I have been trying so hard since our wedding. I sighed, glancing down at my stomach. If you have a solution, then hurry up and prepare it. Put in your best effort, so we can have a dragon baby this year. Seeing me play along so well, my mother-in-law jumped with joy. Saying that, she brought out a pile of pitch-black sludge. She carefully wrapped it up, hiding it from my view, and stepped into the kitchen. Yes. I'll prepare it right away. Meanwhile, I reopened my live stream. Last time, my mother-in-law's shocking actions had stunned the viewers, so this time, the audience had grown significantly. Before long, she placed a bowl of pitch-black soup in front of me. With enthusiasm, she brought it to my lips. Drink up. I gently pushed the bowl away with a smile. Mother, I've been to the hospital for a checkup. My body is perfectly fine. I don't need to drink this remedy. If you didn't know, let me tell you. Whether a child is a boy or a girl depends on the father. If you want a grandson, then Tam Neum should be the one drinking this. My mother-in-law frowned, hesitation flashing in her eyes. Is that true? Of course, if you don't believe me, you can look it up online. Drinking this won't do anything for me. Hearing that, she believed me immediately and nodded enthusiastically. That evening, when Tam Neum came home, he was greeted by a bowl of black soup on the table. I picked it up and brought it to him. This is the soup mother worked so hard to make for you. Drink up. Tam Neum eyed the soup in disgust and tried to push it away. How about you? But before he could finish his sentence, I pushed him down into the chair, then forcefully poured the soup down his throat. At last, every last drop of that thick, black liquid slid into his stomach. I let go of him and smiled. This is the soup mother made to help us have a baby boy. You have to drink it every day from now on. Tam Neum frowned and tasted the soup again. Why does this taste so awful? Bitter medicine cures illness, or do you not want a son? For the sake of having a son, Tam Neum began drinking the tonic soup every day. Mother-in-law even encouraged father-in-law to drink it too. She claimed it would help maintain his vitality as he aged. After 2 weeks of persistence, I was still not pregnant, so mother-in-law decided to increase the dosage. The soup became even more pungent, its stench spreading to the neighbors. She reassured them, once my son has a son, this smell will disappear. Tam Neum's body began to change strangely. He started emitting a horrendous odor, especially from his feet, armpits, mouth, and backside. To cover it up, every morning before work, he doused himself in so much cologne that the scent traveled 10 kilometers. But that wasn't all. His body hair started growing abnormally fast. Even areas that were once hairless began sprouting thick strands. Some follicles even produced multiple hairs at once. When he went to the doctor, the diagnosis was clear: severe male hormone imbalance. Father-in-law also started showing the same symptoms. Finally, Tam Neum lost his temper and yelled at his mother. For the first time, look at me, mother. I'm covered in hair. If it's not because of your soup, then what is it? Seeing him shout, I instinctively slapped him. Is that how you talk to your mother? Mother-in-law wasn't angry, on the contrary, she was overjoyed. Her eyes lit up. It's working. This is a good sign. My grandson will be here soon. She then increased the dosage even more. If one rat used to be enough for one pot of soup, now it took several to make a full batch. Tam Niam's body underwent severe changes. Patches of his skin turned black. His neck oozed a strange, slimy substance. He became utterly repulsive, so much so that even he couldn't stand himself. One day, both Tam Niam and father-in-law suddenly collapsed. Mother-in-law panicked and rushed them to the hospital. Doctor, what's wrong with my husband and son? The doctor replied gravely. After running tests, we found that their bodies are severely poisoned. Their organs are critically damaged. If you had come earlier, we might have saved them. But now, there's nothing we can do. Go in and see them one last time. No, this can't be. Desperate, mother-in-law rushed into the hospital room. I quietly started a live stream, placing my phone in my pocket. Placing my phone in my pocket with the camera exposed. Then, I stepped inside. As soon as I entered, I heard Tam Niam yelling, "It's all your fault. If it weren't for your tonic, I wouldn't have ended up like this. You've ruined my life." The image of the once dutiful son had completely vanished. Before me stood a man full of rage, who didn't hesitate to hurt his own mother. My mother-in-law stepped back, tears streaming down her face. My father-in-law, pale and furious, gritted his teeth. "I must have been blind to have married you." Seeing me enter, he immediately turned his anger toward me. "This is all your fault. Since you stepped into this house, our family has known no peace." I choked up, pretending to be in disbelief. "My mother has dedicated herself to this family. And yet, you say this about me?" She didn't dare resist when her son insulted her, but she vented her anger on me. I finished speaking and slapped my mother-in-law twice, hard. "I treated you like my own mother, and this is how you repay me?" While I was at it, I slapped both Tam Niam and my father-in-law as well. Then I turned away, my voice hoarse. "If you can't accept me, I will move out." As I left, I could still hear my mother-in-law and Tam Niam arguing loudly behind me. On the live stream, the comments section became lively. "They brought this upon themselves. Let them suffer forever. No, those two men are doomed. Haha, karma is real. A wicked mother-in-law like her ended up ruining her husband and son. Justice is served." But the streamer can finally live a happy life now. Happy life? No way. The streamer hasn't even divorced yet. She'll still have to take care of her mother-in-law later. Divorce? I will never get a divorce. I moved out of my in-laws' house into the new apartment I had bought. Thanks to the support of my viewers, I finally had the courage to leave that family. I heard that after I left, my mother-in-law tried to find me, but couldn't. She was forced to take care of her sick son all by herself. After enjoying some peace, I decided to visit Tam Niam in the hospital. When his mother wasn't there, Tam Niam lay in bed, his face pale, his body frail, his thin chest barely rising and falling, proving that he was still alive. Seeing me standing there, dressed well and radiant, he trembled as he tried to sit up. "Myo Myo, I'm sick, yet instead of taking care of me, you're dressing up? Are you seducing another man? Oh, how blind I was to trust you." I ignored him. I opened my live stream right in front of him and sneered. "If it weren't for you two, giving me content for my streams, I wouldn't have made this much money." Hearing the word money, his eyes lit up. "Myo Myo, give me money. If I have money, I can be cured." I calmly replied, "The doctor said you're beyond saving. Besides, didn't you always say money meant nothing to you? You once said that living only for money makes you nothing but trash. So don't overreact. I believe you can handle it yourself." After saying that, I left the hospital room without looking back. The next day, I received news that Tam Niam had passed away. His mother was nowhere to be found. I had to handle all the funeral arrangements for her son alone. She had no job. Tam Niam's income was barely enough to cover basic living expenses. She tried borrowing money from relatives, but those who once watched her scheme against me now refused to help her. So she flew into a rage and cursed everyone in the village. "I treated you all so well before, sharing everything with you. Now I just ask for a little money, and you all stay silent like the mute." With no money for a coffin, she had no choice but to take a mat and wrap Tam Niam and his father before burying them. Her already weak legs, after days of running around, combined with the immense mental pressure, completely lost their ability to function. A few days later, I appeared before her, offering to support her. She sat on the bed, her attitude arrogant. "Tam Niam is dead. Now you are the pillar of this family. You must devote yourself to taking care of me. This mother-in-law won't mistreat you. You not only have to support me, but also help our relatives." Ha! When she needed money, no one helped. And now she wanted me to provide for them? She clearly wanted to drain me dry. She looked at my stomach and sighed. "What a pity that you couldn't bear me a grandson. You will never be a complete woman in this life." I bent down, placed my hand on her shoulder, and whispered in her ear, "You're right, mother. I will definitely treat you well. From that day on, I started my life as a full-time daughter-in-law. Meow meow, bring me some water. My mother-in-law called out to me in a hoarse voice, her lips cracked. At that moment, I was too busy playing a game and just replied, wait a bit. By the time my match ended, I felt thirsty too. So I poured myself a glass of water, took a few sips, then handed her the rest. Here, drink this. She gulped it down, and soon her stomach started rumbling. I absolutely refused to cook. Instead, I ordered my favorite food online. After a few days under my care, she couldn't take it anymore, and insisted on hiring a maid. I spent a large sum to hire a long-term housekeeper, and then left home to focus on my career. A month later, I received news that my mother-in-law had passed away. The police told me, our investigation found that the maid had been locking her up for a long time, verbally abusing and mistreating her. Unable to endure it, she took her own life. We have already arrested the maid. I searched the house, and found that all of her remaining money had been spent by the maid. I muttered, old woman, you can't blame me for this. I even wanted to give you a grand funeral, but you didn't leave a single cent behind. In the end, I wrapped her in a mat and buried her. After that, I sold the house, traveled around the world, and enjoyed life. Under the bright sunlight, I thought to myself, my life is just beginning.